All right. Well, welcome back again to Medicaid, what I'm calling Medicaid 101, right? Medicaid Waiver 101. We as Silver Birch thought that this would be extremely helpful for the community to bring to individuals the opportunity to hear about Medicaid and the Medicaid waiver and how those services can be used to live affordably in assisted living, and whether that's with Silver Birch or another provider. You know, one thing that we pride ourselves on at Silver Birch is inspiring purposeful lives, which is, in our opinion, just educating people about the resources that are available to them. And so we're going to get into waiver today, but that's just one of the services that can help an individual live with Silver Birch or one of the Silver Birch communities. So just a little bit of a background on Silver Birch for those that might be watching or might have logged in that are not familiar with who we are, what we do. We are affordable assisted living. We are in 9 cities throughout the state of Indiana. Our organization has started about 3 years ago, and we've been building assisted living from the ground up and providing a quality lifestyle for individuals at an affordable price. We currently are in Hammond, Michigan City, Mishawaka, 2 communities in the Fort Wayne area, Muncie, Kokomo, Terre Haute, and Evansville, with future plans to expand into other states as well. So welcome to everyone who's here. Welcome to our guest, Charles Bax. I really appreciate you coming back and providing your expertise on this topic for those that are logged in and watching today. So I'll give you just a minute. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, I'd appreciate that, Charles.
Sure. Thanks, Sherry. My name's Charles Bax. I'm a partner at Barnes Thornburg, and I've been doing elder law now for over 25 years. Kind of hard to believe, but the gray hair is there. So, yeah, I really enjoy helping people kind of navigate the different Medicaid programs that are available to help them live better lives and more independent lives. So that's me.
Nice. Well, thank you. So we've had a partnership for a while now, long before I ever came to Silver Birch and before Silver Birch ever came to be. So I know that this partnership has meant a lot to me personally over the years, and certainly the partnership that we have has meant a lot to the success of Silver Birch. So thank you. So I thought I've got a list of questions here that we find are most frequently asked when we start discussing Medicaid or Medicaid waiver with families that come to us. So I thought we'd just go down through this list of questions, and then of course, if anyone joins and has questions, we'll open the floor at some point for them to ask theirs. But maybe just tell us a brief overview of what Medicaid waiver actually is.
Yeah, so Indiana created this Medicaid waiver probably about, I want to say, maybe 15 to 20 years ago. And back when I started looking into the program, I don't even think they knew how the program really worked very well. And there weren't very many people that were in the program, and they didn't even really know how to get people into the program. But over the years, you know, I've kind of talked with the different area on agings, and we kind of through ways of getting more and more people into these programs and how they could better be served in the communities. And so we're very fortunate in Indiana to have a Medicaid waiver program. A lot of states don't have these programs. At which point then the person's independence is basically taken away, because if they can't care for themselves at home and they don't have the money to pay for assisted living, then they're off to a nursing facility, and that's just where they end up. And I think, you know, Indiana has been very progressive over the years. And it kind of makes sense, you know, if a person's in a nursing home and on Medicaid, the state of Indiana is paying that nursing home a lot of money. They have a reimbursement rate, call it $200 a day, probably more than that for some facilities. So they're paying up to $6,000 a month for an individual. So Indiana came through with this Medicaid waiver program saying, hey, I think people want to be more independent, and it actually will save the state of Indiana a lot of money if we create a program where individuals can get help at home, or potentially go to Silver Birch, where there's an assisted living program where Medicaid would say, okay, we'll help pay for the assisted living facility. And so over those years, I qualified several individuals for the in-home Medicaid waiver. The assisted living Medicaid waiver really wasn't online until probably the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, I would say. There weren't very many facilities, assisted living facilities, that would take it. And so most of the time it would be an in-home waiver. But over the years, I think some of these assisted living places are thinking, hey, this would be great if we could, have Medicaid help pay for some of the care costs. And so basically, I think the assisted livings kind of got on board, and the state got on board, and more individuals kind of put together and the resources and said, let's build some places just like Silver Birch here. And it's a huge success. I mean, it is a huge success. And so, my practice of doing a lot of Medicaid cases, I mean, it used to be probably maybe 95% nursing home Medicaid and maybe 5% Medicaid waiver. And now it's probably 60% Medicaid waiver and 40% nursing home Medicaid. So it's come a long, long way. And so, it's the Medicaid waiver can help people at home. And a lot of people have a misconception of a Medicaid waiver program at home. So they think, well, I can be at home and get 24/7 care at home and have a care provider come in and provide all those hours. And I'm here to tell you, and you probably know this as well, that's not how that program works. So, they'll come in and based on need, they will assess an individual and say, okay, this person needs 2 hours a day or 4 hours a day. Typically, you don't get many more hours over maybe 4 hours on a daily basis. Now, there are some rare exceptions to the rule. So I do have clients. I have one that's a paraplegic. Well, he's getting 16 hours a day. All right. So there are a few exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, in my mind, the way I tell my families, you really need to have another spouse in the home, or you need to have a kid also in the home or stopping by for an in-home Medicaid waiver program to work successfully. But the nice thing is if an individual qualifies for the in-home Medicaid waiver program, they can transition to Silver Birch without any gap in coverage. And the Medicaid waiver will just simply transition to the assisted living portion, and we'll start paying, the assisted living bill. So waiver program is fabulous, and I really enjoy working with families because they don't even know this stuff even exists. They have no idea that you can get in-home care, or they have absolutely no idea that they would ever be able to afford assisted living, because most of the time they call an assisted living facility and it's $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And they look at their income at $2,000 a month and they're like, I just can't afford this. This is not even a possibility, right? So they put it off and forget about it. And it's just not the case, with the Medicaid waiver programs. Like you said, it's affordable assisted living. It is very affordable. And when you're on these programs, it's usually less than what the person's is on a monthly basis. So they even have extra from their Social Security or pension to just spend on day-to-day things that they want. They want to go out to the restaurant, or they want to buy something, no limitations, do whatever you want. So it's been a wonderful journey with this assisted living and this Medicaid waiver program. So
yeah. No, I agree. I am surprised to this day. I've been working now in affordable assisted living, just about, 5 or 6 years in this side of it, coming over from private pay. And I am surprised at the number of people that we run into that just don't know that the program exists or anything about it. And to me, that's a shame. That tells me that we're not doing as an industry enough to get the word out about the benefits that are available to people. And we really are changing lives. Yourself and our communities and communities like ours are changing lives. We often hear from people who say, this is the nicest place I've ever lived in my life. And we just moved in a little individual this last week, and she was so hungry because she'd been choosing between, medications and buying groceries, and moved her in, and she came to her first meal in the dining room, and you would have thought she hadn't eaten in months. And it was just such a joy to see her really be able to order off the menu whatever she wanted and have her enjoy a meal. So exciting things that we're doing. But so I know I get a lot of questions, like one of the questions I get is, does my family have to sell the home? So I thought I'd ask that of you today, because that's one of the first questions I typically get when families come into one of our communities is, we don't want to have to sell the family a home. We all grew up in that home. We don't want to have to get rid of it. So what would you say to that family?
Yeah, so with respect to the house, you can qualify for Medicaid assistance owning real estate. So you can have the family home and still qualify for Medicaid, whether or not it's a single person or a husband and wife. So in a husband and wife situation, you would simply transfer the house to the person, the community spouse, or the person that's not qualifying for Medicaid assistance. And Medicaid, even if the spouse is with them at your community at Silver Birch, Medicaid will still disregard the home as a what they call countable resource, meaning they won't look at it. They will completely exclude it from the list of assets that a person has. And so in that situation, yeah, no problem owning the house. You simply would transfer it to the community spouse or the person that's not applying for Medicaid assistance, and Medicaid basically will say, we don't care. One of the issues that people will run into with that, if you leave the house jointly owned in that situation and the spouse that's not on Medicaid passes away first, there can be some complications. And so with any of this, I would say they will want to talk with an elder law attorney or somebody that knows what they're talking about with respect to Medicaid and Medicaid issues. But in general, the house is exempt for Medicaid purposes, works really well in a husband and wife situation. It can also work in a single person situation. So if the person is single, they go to your community and they want to qualify for Medicaid assistance and they have the house. Do they have to sell it? The answer is no, they do not have to sell it. Medicaid will put a requirement up, and the requirement is the house either has to be leased, so they have to put it up for lease, and get some type of fair market rental. It can't be for $1. So, they'd have to pay a fair market lease, but it can be on the lower end of things. It doesn't have to be sky high. Or the person has to put it up for sale, okay? Now, that doesn't mean they have to sell it. It just means it has to be up for sale, all right? So they can get a for sale by owner sign, put their phone number on it, take a picture of it, and Medicaid will consider that house up for sale, at which point then it is exempt for Medicaid purposes, meaning the person can qualify for Medicaid assistance owning that house. And do they have to have the intention of selling? So if, say they have a buyer and the buyer wants to negotiate and say, no, I'll only pay you this. You do not have to negotiate. So Medicaid does not make you negotiate on your sale of your house. So you can say, nope, it's this price or it's nothing. Okay. So many times if the person really doesn't want to sell the house, they don't really have to sell the house, unless the person just walks in and says, here's my briefcase of cash and I'm going to pay full value for it, which I've yet to find that person yet. Most likely there won't be any issues at that point. So, but one thing that they will have to keep in mind is just because they're eligible for Medicaid doesn't mean Medicaid can't come back after the house once they've passed away. So once again, that's another opportunity for that individual to probably talk with an elder law attorney so they can talk to them about what are some ways of protecting it from Medicaid coming back after the house, after the person passes away. But
Sure.
all in all, you can totally own a house, you can own a farm, you can own any real estate. You can have 2 pieces of real estate and still qualify for Medicaid in a husband and wife or in a single person situation.
Thank you. That is one of probably the hottest question we get. Another thing that we hear from the children a lot is what happens to the life insurance for mom and dad. So we get this question a lot. Well, do they have to cash in their policy, or do they have to stop paying on their policy if they have a term life policy? So I know this is getting in a little bit into the weeds, but some of these are the most frequently asked questions we get. So how would you answer that question?
Okay, so if they have a life insurance policy, very rarely will I ever instruct my client to cash it in or to stop making the premium payments unless they're outrageous. Okay, so if a person has a term policy, that means there's no cash value to the policy, meaning they cannot cash it in while they're alive and receive any money. In those situations, Medicaid does not care about the policy. It's exempt. It does not count against the individual. You just want to make sure the beneficiary is anybody but the person that's on Medicaid. Mm-hmm. So as long as the person is a family member, or it could be a funeral home, it could be anyone other than the individual on Medicaid, Medicaid will not go after the proceeds from that life insurance policy. It will get paid directly to the beneficiary. The person owning the policy, if they're the ones that are on Medicaid, they can continue to pay the life insurance premium. That is not considered a gift for Medicaid purposes. That is a legitimate expense that Medicaid would look at and say, we don't care, so spend away if you want to. And once again, they don't have the right to come back after that policy once the individual passes away. So that's fine. And it works really well in your type of a community, because a person usually does have extra income that they can use to pay for these term life insurance policies. Okay. If they have what they call whole life policy, or policy that does have cash value to it, Medicaid will count the cash value against the person for Medicaid purposes. And so the asset threshold for a single person is less than $2,000 on the last day of the month. So if that cash value of that life insurance policy is $2,000 or more, or with their bank account plus the cash value is $2,000 or more, the individual cannot qualify for Medicaid assistance. So many times what we'll do, if the cash value is lower than what the death benefit is by, let's just say, a pretty good sum, so they're not about the same, so if the cash value is $2,500 and the death benefit is $2,750, there's not much difference. But if it's $10,000, so at death it pays $10,000, there's a pretty good gap there. So we don't want to lose that asset. So many times what we end up doing in our planning is transferring ownership of that life insurance policy either to a spouse, which is okay for Medicaid purposes, or to a kid. Once again, the individual will never qualify for Medicaid assistance if that cash value is $2,000 or more, no matter how much is in the bank account. So many times, I suggest we do not cash in any kind of life insurance policies. We simply transfer the ownership either to the spouse or to a kid. When you transfer ownership to a kid, that can have some qualification issues, meaning Medicaid will see that transfer to a child, and then they will say, okay, you can't get any Medicaid benefits potentially for a period of time. So once again, it's important that they have enough money to pay your community during that period of time. So that's one strategy that we look at. Another might be we take a loan against the policy to reduce the cash value and still potentially transfer the ownership of that. So they've got the cash to pay your community, and then they still have the death benefit that they can transfer over to a kid or something of that nature. But very rarely would I suggest cash in a life insurance policy unless the cash value and the death benefit are about the same.
Thank you. That's good advice. The other question we get a lot, and that is, I want to use aid and attendance, VA aid and attendance benefits, but can I still use, qualify for Medicaid and Medicaid waiver using those benefits?
Yeah, so the VA and the Medicaid programs are two completely different programs, and they have two different requirements in order to get into the particular program. So you can receive both Medicaid waiver and a VA aid and attendance pension benefit. So you can get both. And I've got a lot of my clients have both of those programs going on. Some of the issues you have to look at basically are what the VA looks at is, are there any kind of medical expenses? So that's what the VA is looking for. They're looking for medical expenses. Medicaid's looking at, well, how much money do you have? VA is really looking at it, I'm not going to give you any money unless you can show me that you have a medical expense. So even though it has pension in the title, VA aid and attendance pension, it's not a pension. It's a medical reimbursement is what it is. So on the VA side, if you have enough medical expenses, the VA will give you money. They'll reimburse you money through this aid and attendance pension benefit. And so basically, let's say that you have a husband and wife at your community. One is on Medicaid and the other is not on Medicaid. And let's say their bill is $3,000 a month for both of them, okay? Because the other spouse has a level of care or something of that nature. The VA will look at that whole $3,000 expense and count that as a medical expense, all right? So whatever they're paying you is basically going to be considered a medical expense. And so then if the VA will then look at their income, and let's say you got the husband and wife and their income is $2,500 a month. So their income's $2,500 and their bill is $3,000. So they got negative cash flow. So they're down $500 a month. So the VA would say you are eligible for this reimbursement for this aid and attendance pension benefit. And now they can get a pension check from the VA in that situation up to $2,249 a month. So depending on the situation, you can get both. But to give you another hypothetical, let's say you have a single person and they're on the Medicaid waiver and they're paying $1,050 because they're in your one bedroom over there. And let's say their income is $2,000 a month. All right, so they got $2,000 coming in and $1,000 going out. Basically what the Medicaid is going to say, if that person is not the veteran, it's the spouse of the veteran, there's not enough medical expense to get any reimbursement from the VA. But if it's the veteran would actually get a check for about $1,000 extra a month. So if that individual is the veteran at your facility, income $2,000 a month, bill is $1,050, they could apply for the VA aid and attendance pension benefit and probably get an additional check from the VA for about $1,000 a month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know it gets confusing, and that's why we have to have experts like you, Charles, to help our families. So we don't claim to be that in the weeds with all of these programs. So we appreciate that. I was trying to look here at the questions I had. Let's see, what else? How do you apply? So it's not an easy process. So how do you apply?
Yeah, so the first step that I have my clients do is contact their local area on aging. So for me, it's Aging In-Home Services here in the Fort Wayne area and the surrounding communities. And basically you're asking them to do an assessment for your individual that you want to qualify for Medicaid assistance. So you're asking them to do an assessment for the Medicaid Waiver program. And a lot of people are like, well, what are they going to ask? How does that work? What are they doing exactly? So the job of Aging In-Home Services is to basically assess a person if they are disabled enough under the Medicaid criteria to qualify for a Medicaid waiver program. So without that assessment, I can't even apply for Medicaid. So it all starts with that assessment for the Medicaid waiver program. So depending on your area, there's an area on aging that you would call, and then you would ask them to do an assessment for the Medicaid waiver program. And then they want you to point to things that the individual needs assistance with. So, you know, saying that the person can't make their own meals or go to the grocery store or drive anymore, they don't really care about that. So what they're really looking for is, does this person have a cognitive issue? Does this person have a physical issue? Does the cognitive issue require a person to help them with their medications? Is it not safe for this individual to be in their own home because of their cognitive issues? Physically, do they need help with bathing? Do they need help getting in and out of the shower? Are they a fall risk? You know, do they have any incontinence issues? Do they need help getting out of bed or out of a chair? Do they need help getting to the bathroom? Do they need help dealing with an incontinence issue? You know, there's a whole host of criteria that Aging In-Home Services looks at, and you need to be able to point to 3 things. And once you point to the 3 things, then basically you meet the disability criteria for this Medicaid waiver program. And that's really the only thing that's out of my control. I cannot control that assessment. Everything else, you know, it is what it is. The Medicaid rules are the Medicaid rules. We know how to play by those rules and we can get there, okay? So that's not the question. It's really these assessments. And I can tell you, and you probably know this, every area on aging does things a little differently, right? So the one that we have, Aging In-Home Services, they're pretty generous. And so they're nice people. And so they want people to get into this particular program. And they're more helpful in helping the individual get into the particular program. And I think some of the other areas, as you probably experienced, they're not as nice, they're not as responsive, and they're not really trying to help an individual get into the program. If they can, they can. If they can't, oh well, right? You know, so they don't really look at the person's overall situation. So that is the first step. So the first step is getting that approval. That approval is called a slot. You need the slot to apply. I always just call it the ticket. I need the ticket. We need the ticket. Where's my ticket? So get the ticket. Usually for us, it's about 6 weeks. It takes about 6 weeks from when you call to get that ticket or slot. The nice thing about the assisted living program is that the Medicaid is retroactive. So if we have the slot or the ticket, Medicaid can retroactively go back, assuming we meet all the other criteria on the Medicaid, the income and the asset test, to get into the program. And then the benefits can go back retroactive. Although the Medicaid's pretty quick, so when we apply for Medicaid, it's probably about another 4 to 6 weeks and we get our approvals typically, even during our virus situation right now. So, but it hasn't been too bad. But that's kind of the 1-2 punch. We got to start with the area on aging in home services to do the assessment. It doesn't cost anything to do the assessment. You can always get reassessed. You can say there's a change of circumstance, or you can appeal their assessment. You can say, hey, look, I don't think you took into consideration these things, or this person told you they were fine and they're really not fine. And usually they're pretty good about doing another assessment at that point.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we find that a lot, that individuals are a little bit shy about being honest about the things that they need help with. And we often will say, listen, if you're not honest about what you need, they're not going to approve you for this program. This isn't the time to be modest.
Right.
Share. If you need help with it more than 3 days a week, you should be saying, yes, I need help with this, right? So
Sure.
yeah, we coach our families on that a lot. And that's one thing I feel like Silver Birch does a really good job, and that is helping walk people through this process. We have a pamphlet that we've put together that's called Weaving Your Life into Silver Birch. And each of those pages talk about each of the steps. So the assessment process with the AAA, and then the approval process for Medicaid, and each of those things that have to happen for that. So certainly if someone's watching and it's a little bit intimidating and overwhelming to think about all the things that they have to do, they don't have to make that first contact with the AAA by themselves. We can help walk them through that, and then certainly get them in touch with individuals like you, Charles, that can help them navigate the Medicaid process if it's a complicated case and family has a lot of questions. So the last question that we get a lot, of course, and I'm sure that it got asked actually on the last webinar that we did, and that is, well, what do you charge to help a family navigate the system? So
yeah, that's a good question. So I do a lot of Medicaid cases, and since I do several cases, I've got an associate attorney that helps me draft the documents, and then I have 2 paralegals that help me do the Medicaid applications. And that's all really good, because then that helps bring the costs down, because then I'm not having to do all that work. I can pass it off to people that have lower billable rates. But to be quite honest, it varies a lot on the cost. And so, there could be a case where maybe there's not a lot involved, and maybe it's $1,000 or $1,500. Or maybe it's a very complex case and we've got a lot of assets to deal with, and maybe it's more like $9,500. And so there's a pretty big spread in there. But what I do with all of my clients is we can have a free initial consultation. I can tell them what can be done, what the result's going to look like, and then I tell them what it's going to cost for them. And then they can decide if they want to do it or not. And then they'll know exactly how it's all going to work and what the result's going to look like. And everybody can feel as good about that as possible. So, but yeah, it's a great question. It's just not one shoe fits all on that. And so, and I have some clients that are fabulous in getting me information, and I have other clients that are really painful. And so, if it's harder for me, or if it takes more time for me to get the information I need, obviously it's going to cost them more as well. But if you have people that are like, okay, here's a list, I got everything, here you go, that just makes my life easier, and then that'll make their bill a lot cheaper at that point in time as well. So
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna unmute everyone right now and just see if we've got anyone on the line that has a question for us today. So let's see if I can get Dominique unmuted. And let's see here. All right, I think I have everyone unmuted now. Is there anyone that is watching today that has questions that either I, myself from Silver Birch, or Charles could answer regarding Medicaid waiver? All right. Any
Charles,
questions?
this is Allie. We have a lot of people that they potentially are a veteran and they are looking to get Medicaid. Which way would you steer them, or how would you educate someone to decide which would be the better option for them? I know you touched on it a little bit, but which route would you suggest, or how do you figure that out?
Yeah, typically that's a really good question. To me, the best program that's out there is the Medicaid. And the reason for that is Medicaid just pays everything, right? So it's paying their bill at your community. It's paying all prescription drugs. It's paying doctor copays. It's paying hospital bills. It pays everything. So the individual really doesn't have any other medical expenses the rest of their life. And so I look at that, and then it also transitions, you know, if the person is at home, transitions to assisted living, can transition to nursing home. So they're covered no matter what the situation ever becomes. And a lot of people have a lot of peace of mind knowing, okay, I got that taken care of. We don't have to worry about that anymore. The VA is really good when a person might not quite meet the Medicaid criteria for the Medicaid waiver. So let's say they're a little too healthy to get into a Medicaid waiver, okay? So maybe they don't need an actual direct assist with bathing. They just need someone in the room or something like that when the person is showering. Maybe they just need that with some medication assist, but they don't need a dressing assist or some other things. Then we're looking at the VA and we're saying, okay, we can't quite get into the Medicaid waiver, but we can get this VA benefit. And if you're a surviving spouse of a veteran, that's going to get you an extra $1,228 a month. And if you're a veteran, that's going to get you another $1,900 a month. And if you have a husband and wife, that's another $2,250 a month. So it's quite a bit of extra money in that scenario. So now the other scenario that I look at is if you have a husband and wife and they're in your community and one's on Medicaid, we might look at also getting the VA benefit going as well, depending on what their bill is and depending on how much income they have coming in as well. Because, you know, if you have two people in there and the second person needs a level of care as well, the bill's it's gonna creep, right? It's gonna get a little bit higher. So many times we might look at that VA program and say, okay, we can take the bite off of this, get that extra money rolling in, so at least you're a break even, or maybe you're a cash flow positive where you have positive cash flow in that type of a scenario. You know, but if you're just a veteran and you're on a Medicaid waiver and your income's pretty good, as you know, it's like, okay, they got $2,000 coming in and their bill's $1,050, so they got $950 extra a month. Do they really need any more money at that point in time? I mean, if they do, okay, great, we can look at the VA program. If not, then, you know, we just would say, hey, you got $950 extra a month. Is that good, or do you have some outstanding bills you need to pay that VA benefit could help you with? So those are some of the things that we look at. But I will tell you that I do have a lot of clients that get both, they're on both programs. And many times it works good on an in-home waiver and the VA at the same time. Because as we discussed, the in-home waiver, Medicaid's not really paying for a lot of hours of care. So many times they can get more hours by getting more money coming in and then privately paying those extra hours at that point in time.
Great question, Allie. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, Charles, I want to thank you for your time today. How, if someone wanted to explore the opportunity to look at this benefit, how would they get in touch with you, Charles?
Yeah, so they can call me. My number's 260-425-4684. Or you can email me at cbacks, BACKS, at btlaw.com. So they can email me as well. And as I said, we'll sit down, we can talk about it, and I don't bite, I don't charge. So on the first visit, so we can talk about things and get you educated on what's possible.
Okay, great. And for more information about Silver Birch, go to www.silverbirchliving.com. This video has been recorded. The webinar has been recorded. It will be posted to the Silver Birch YouTube channel for future viewing. So if you weren't able to catch Charles' phone number or his email address or the website for Silver Birch, you can find it at the Silver Birch YouTube channel and replay the video. So thank you, Charles, very much for spending this little bit of time with us, and I hope those watching have found it beneficial today. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.